Welcome back. So, continuing where we left off last time, we're going to start by creating a new simulation. As a reminder, we do this by hitting the New button here. This will create a new simulation that is going to be empty. Now, to start, you're going to want to create a name for your simulation. In this case, I'm going to name it My First Simulation. Alright, next, you're going to want to use these navigation buttons to change what virtual space or what environment you're going to be in. You're able to see the public repository as well as anything you have privately uploaded yourself or that has been shared with you or is within your organizations by making the switch here. In this case though, we're going to look for one called Public Classroom. Here we are. This is the space and environment we're going to go into. Here you can see that it has created our simulation here at the top. The last date modified here is automatically populated as the date you made it. And when you select your simulation, there are these buttons that come up for each. On the far left, you can rename your simulation here, so doing so, example, by adding that in. And now the name has been changed. You're also able to copy your simulation if you would like, which will make an exact copy of the simulation at the state it was when you hit the copy button, and appends the word copy to it. To delete a simulation, you would do the trash can icon here, and then it will be removed from your list. If you'd like, you can share your simulation with others whose information you know. So whether you want to give them viewer permissions, which will make it so that they can only experience your simulation, or editor permissions, so that they can also make changes to it. To do so, you would type in a name here where you could then share it with someone else. I'll share it with my coworker, Ethan, and give him viewing permissions. After I've typed in his name, I can click Add, and here I can see it's been here. If I hit Send, he would then get a notification that this simulation has been shared with him. So if I go here, and I can see on the list here, he has been added. So with that, and if I want to remove anyone, just hit that, and then click Send. And anything that has been removed will be done so. Last, or second to last here, you can experience a simulation. We'll save that for later though, after we've actually added things to our environment. And lastly, you can download and save the experience that you have created onto your desktop or whatever device you are currently on. This will make it so that you are able to experience the simulation whether you have internet or not. Doing so will limit some of the functionalities that you have here, such as you're not going to be leveraging the online required features like AI and a few others. But otherwise, you would be able to store and travel with your simulations without internet. And let's go over the first one that we skipped, which is Edit Mode. Click this here, and you'll be brought into the editing platform for the creation and adjustment of your simulations. As our scene is empty here, this should not take too long to load. You can see we are in our environment space here. So let's just quickly go over the layout of the Scene Layout tab of the editing example here. So first, this is your view of the scene layout. You're able to adjust this by using the W, AS, and D keys to move the camera. You can also zoom by scrolling with your mouse wheel, or you can pan the camera by using the middle mouse wheel to click and drag your view. You can hold down with your right mouse button to rotate the camera. Within your space and environment, you will see this little white avatar representing where the player will spawn into your environment. If you want to adjust the spawn position of your players and their orientation, you click the Set Spawn Position button here in the upper right hand corner. By clicking it, you can see that this character is now attached to my icon, and I'm able to drag and place this around wherever I would like. In our case, we're going to manipulate him around and drop him over here. After clicking once, he will be locked in place. I can then move my mouse to the left or right to rotate his orientation. Okay, so with this, if I was happy with that position, I could drop him there, and if I want to adjust him, I could do so however I want. So by leveraging these tools, you're able to navigate about the space, moving about easily, and change the spawn position of your player. Next, we have our assets over here. In order to bring in any object, you are able to navigate through this page here of our public assets, or again, if you have any that are private or shared with you directly, you can change what is viewed here by using the drop-down. All of the assets necessary for this tutorial, though, will be located in the public repository, so you shouldn't have any issues with access. Now, in order to spawn an object, all you need to do is left-click on the image here, drag it to the left of the view, and left-click to drop it in place. In our case, let's bring in the first of our assets of a table. So, by using the search function, I'm able to limit my viewable options here. And in my case, I want to bring in the science lab work table. So, I can left-click, and you can see it's brought in. Currently, it is following my mouse, and if I left-click once, it will no longer be doing so. If you left-click and hold, you can change the orientation, if you want, before releasing. Once you do, it'll be dropped in place. And you can see this little axis showing its orientation here. If you do not like these axes, you can hide them or show them by the left click. The currently selected object will be highlighted in blue, and if you left click on to empty space, you can see it will be deselected. Any object that is currently selected, you can view in the inspector. Let's go to the Object Browser tab and discuss that now. Every object that you've brought in is currently shown in the Object Browser. You can select objects by clicking on them in the environment, as I showed before, or by clicking on them in the Object Browser. Any object that is currently selected will be shown in the inspector. In the inspector, you can see the name of the object in question, which you are able to rename if you would like. Science work table is what I'm going to do here. And you are able to directly edit the position and orientation of objects. So for example, if I want to change the exact coordinates of this, I can go here and switch it to 0.3 and negative 2.5. And you can see that these changes are reflected on the object here. If I want to change the rotation, I can do so by typing it in, and I can change any of these values if I want. But in my case, I actually got the orientation to where I wanted it, and I'm going to put it back to where it was before. You're also able to directly change and edit the scale of the object here. So I can make my table longer, I can make it taller, or I can make it wider by just adjusting these values. In this case, I'm just going to make it twice, or I'm going to make it 1.5 times as long. And I'm quite happy with that. You're also able to adjust some other default properties of an object, such as the mass, which will change how easy it is to move the object if it's being bumped into by others, if an object is visible or not, which determines if at runtime a player or the environment is able to see and render the object and interact with it. Even if I adjust this value here, it will not change in the editor, but this will be affected at runtime. Is static determines if the object is affected by outside forces, such as gravity and being able to be pushed and pulled by outside objects. By default, all objects will be visible and static when initially brought into the environment. If you want the mass function to take effect, the isStatic function or variable will need to be set to false so that it can be affected by outside objects. Otherwise, this can be largely ignored. Next, we have the isSnappedTo property. This is a little bit complicated in what it can do and what it's for, but by and large, you can just think of this as allowing you to connect two different objects to each other. One is the parent and one is the child, and any position or rotation offsets that may be necessary in order to accomplish that. In this case, as we only have one object, we won't be leveraging this feature, but I will be showcasing how this is used with other objects as we get going. Next is a description of an object. If you want, you can write a description about your objects, such as, this is a science or table. And if you want, you can have that description shown during your simulation when it is highlighted over by your experienced user. And whether that is in local position, meaning this would put it 1 y value or 1 meter above the table if you highlighted it and selected it, or in a global position, which would be in the exact coordinates that you typed in. So for example, this is at this location. And if I wanted it to be exactly on the table location, I would need to put it here, or I can adjust it like so, which this would be the equivalent of doing a local adjustment of 1, because I've taken the exact y value and the same x and z values and added 1 to it. This would be the same as a local value of 1. And you're able to do so with that. Next is the grab mechanics, which determines whether an object could be grabbed and how it will behave when that is done to the object. In our case, we're really not going to do that to this table, but there will be others that we do so with, so I'll go through them now. First, whether an object is able to be grabbed or not is determined based off of this little check mark here. If it is ticked, you could then grab the object, and it will then behave based off of the grab mechanics you have established. Basic means that when you grab an object, it will go to your hand. If you want the object to be offset or in a specific orientation, you would do so adjusting it here. The other grab types that you are able to use are slider, rotator, dragger, grabber, and climbable. We won't be leveraging those within this simulation, but I will quickly run through them and what they're for. Slider objects would be done for those that you want to grab and then move along an axis. So it does not go to your hand, but moves along some position. This is typically done for things like drawers that you would utilize and open, or anything that goes and travels along an individual axis. Rotator allows you to choose an object and have it, when it's grabbed, change based off an orientation or rotation, rotating as you move your hand around it. This is very useful for things like doors that you want to swing open along like door handles and things, changing dials, or wheels like when you're driving or things of that nature. Draggers are objects that when grabbed, you want them to stay moving across the floor. This is useful for things like carts and other things that when you grab them, you really want them to remain on the floor when you're dragging them around. Grabber would be for things that you want to use and then replace your hand or give you an extension to grab things and use that object to grab other things. This would be things for like trash pickup or other things of that nature where the object that you are grabbing needs to be able to grab other objects. And this is what that is for. And last is climbable. If you want to be able to grab an object and make it so that you are climbing or using it to lift yourself up, this is what you would do. This is typically used for things like ladders or things of that nature. But again, with our table here, we're not going to be leveraging any of those, and within this simulation, we will only be utilizing the basic grab type here. To learn more, you can go to our documentation on our website that will cover each of these. All right. And last, you have some statistics about your object in question, how many polygons it is or vertices, how many triangles it is, and thus how heavy the load is of the individual object that was brought in. Within our environment, you are also able to adjust the skybox. Here you can see this is the default skybox, and by adjusting these properties here, you can see that the skybox outside of our windows here is being adjusted. We're able to change it to any of the following above, here to whatever you would like, including sending us into space. But in our case, I'm quite happy with the day blue sky. All right. Lastly, let's go over our asset movement tools. I've already shown you how you're able to directly adjust the values of an asset by using the inspector, but you can also do so with these tools here. By default, you are on the Select tool. With this, you can freely click around and select any objects, and only when you are clicking on an object will it then be selected. If you are on any of the other tools, you can select with them, except for the delete tool, which we'll get into in a minute. But if you want to just make sure you're only selecting and not accidentally dragging anything else, you can use the select tool to be certain that that will be the case. The Move XZ tool lets you click and drag anywhere on either on the object in question or an empty space, and you can then move and drag the object around. As you can see here, when I move it and let go, the position value is adjusted. If you want to move an object in the y-axis, simply just move to the Move Y tool and click and drag to move the object up and down. While you are using these tools, it is able to go through other objects, so do be careful or do be mindful of that. Next is the Rotate tool, which lets you spin, click, and drag to rotate your object. Then there's the Scale tool, where you can change and drag to adjust the size of your objects by just clicking and dragging up or down. This will scale it universally along all three axes. If you want to make a specific adjustment and move along there, you have to change it here first, and then it will maintain that ratio between them. And lastly is the Delete tool. Let's make a new table instead, because I don't want to do this. Yep. So if I bring this in and click Delete on my Delete tool and select it, I will get this warning that's asking me, am I sure, do I want to delete this? If I don't want to be bothered with this, I can click this button here so it won't warn me for the next minute or so. But otherwise, click Confirm Delete and it will be removed from your object browser here. Let's quickly put this back to where it was. Leave at a 1.5, 1, 1. So with that, I have put my table back here. I think it was more to the left. Anyways, so with this, we have gone through the basic properties within what you have here in your environment, how you are able to bring them in and adjust and set up your environment. Please join me in my next video where we will go over and spawning in the objects within our environment, arranging them and placing them, and going through all of those adjustment processes. Thank you.